Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about originality and newness. It's about interpreting makeup product trends for a target consumer base, about engaging consumers through a strategic launch calendar, and it's about the changing geography of our industry's most influential markets. On the Cosmo Factory podcast today, I am speaking with Isabelle Tambue, Global Director of Essence Cosmetics. Isabelle, welcome to Cosmo Factory.
Thanks so much for having me, Diana. It's so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your being here. I'm excited to speak with you
Of course.
also. So I would like to start our conversation in a philosophical place, just
Okay.
thinking about the idea of newness. So as best we can, let's forget about the cosmetics industry for just a moment. Why is new so compelling?
I think new always excites us as human beings. I think it always has some sort of surprise element. It's the discovery of, something new, something you haven't seen before. And I suppose also if we take beauty out of the game, it's sort of widening your horizons. If you see something new, you maybe see new opportunities, other opportunities, and other points of perspectives.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Just getting a little closer to our industry, then, how can we create something original when the consumer space is already inundated with options?
I think if you look, well, for me, there's sort of two sides to approach newness in beauty, or especially in color cosmetics, where we are,
Yeah.
running our brand in. I think you can come from a very sensorial perspective, and that's all about, new textures, new experiences, new, sensorialities that are, we're seeing strongly growing right now, especially, coming from Asia. So it's all about research and development. It's, what's coming out of the laboratories. So that's let's say the technical and the playful side. And then on the other side, newness, especially for me, comes a lot from storytelling and identifying what the consumers are looking for. Sometimes we see the girls experimenting with products that, and creating looks or using products for things that are not originally planned to use for. And then if you understand which looks the girls want to create, then you can come up with the suitable product. And that in turn then excites the consumers because they have the feeling we really get them.
Yes. Was there something else you wanted to say there?
No, I was thinking about one example that I think looking at it right now at, let's say, end of August and 25 is maybe not so super exciting anymore. But when we came up with it 1.5 years ago, I think it was super interesting. We saw the girls using henna color to sort of outline their lip line, or we saw them using brow colors to
Okay.
do that because it had some sort of staining effect, and coming up with something that then offers a solution, which is some sort of a staining but super thin liner, which at that back then
Yes,
no
yes.
one no one had thought about, or at least it wasn't available in the market. I think things like that, understanding what the consumers are trying to achieve and what the looks is and what their end aim is, then you can try to offer fun solutions that are
Yes.
easy to use.
No, that's an excellent example. I appreciate that. Now, Essence Cosmetics, the brand where you work, is owned by a company called Cosnova out of Germany.
Right.
And this is a beauty company I would have to say excels at newness. I hope you'll give us a picture of the product portfolio that you oversee. Like how many SKUs do you have? How many new launches do you have? Maybe every season, quarter, whatever interval makes sense. Paint a little picture for us.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I think we have a huge newness factor because that's also how, how our business model works and how we have grown as large as we are. Talking for Essence, I think right now we probably have around, I would assume 800 SKUs that are active, and you really have to distinguish between what we sell also online through our various channels, and what you can see and find in the stores. And the way we normally operate is that we have our point of sale, which is, you know, the piece of furniture that you can see if you walk into the drugstore markets or in the supermarkets. That depends, you know, where you are. In Germany, which is, let's say, our home turf, we normally have a 2-meter module that holds around 450 products. And our strategy is to relaunch and bring newness for around half of the assortment each year. So
Okay.
every 6 months, we update around 25% of our assortment. So you can already see from the numbers that we are bringing hundreds of new products, hundreds of new SKUs every year. And that is just, let's say, for the offline business, for our brick and mortar. We have, of course, also online channels. We have a lot of trend editions. Our trend and limited editions have an even faster rotations. So while some of our standard products are in the assortment for many, many years because they may be hero products or, you know, long established bestsellers, we have these, you know, more trend related products that sometimes are only in the assortment for 1 to 2 years, and then we exchange them with the next big thing. But the trend editions, however, they turn approximately every 6 weeks.
Wow.
So there's always a collection that is dedicated to a specific theme. You know, sometimes it's the season, you know, a Christmas one, one for Easter, one for summer. Sometimes it's a super trendy texture, let's put it this way, or some sort of trend, fashion trend, a specific color. Sometimes we do collabs, and these turn really very, very quickly. So yeah, we have a big team
Yeah, sure.
here at Essence, and we really bring a lot of newness. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Tell us who your customer is and maybe what is it about this newness that excites this particular customer?
Well, Essence is we cater to, let's say, the young consumers. So we always say our target group is the Gen Z. And now with, you know, also Gen Z obviously growing and becoming a little bit older. Also, let's say the older part of the Gen Alpha, so to say. So the young teenagers are starting to, you know, come to the age where you start experimenting with makeup, where, you know, you try your first mascara, you try your first nail polish. And this is normally the age where the consumers and the girls are discovering us as a brand, because we are very affordable. We are, you know, very accessible as well. So this is where the young girls also have it easy to find us. So
Mhm.
this is, let's say, our typical consumer, anywhere between the ages of 13, 14, up to the end 20s.
Mhm.
And I believe this is especially an age where you sort of find yourself, where you experiment a lot, you know, where you're maybe not so sure which exact style you have by yourself. You know, you look at your friends, you look at, you know, people in school or on the street, you try to imitate maybe a couple of things. So we really want to give our consumers the freedom to be able to try and don't take yourself too seriously. And you don't have to break the bank, you know, when you want to try new looks.
Yeah.
And also, I believe it's a generation that is very, very open for newness, very open for trends, you know, very open for fashion, for looks, for beauty, for, you know, music, cultural movements. And that obviously also helps. So we also have to make sure that we're not just bringing, let's say, the right products that fit the right trends, that fit the right looks, let's put it this way, but that we also meet our consumers where they are, you know, whether
Mhm.
it's gaming or music or, you know, the social platforms that they like to also live in is super relevant for us.
Yeah, yeah. No, as you're talking, it makes me think how fun it must be to work with that target market in mind all the time. I imagine it would keep your mind open to self-discovery and like you suggested,
Totally,
newness in other spaces, music,
totally.
and yeah, that's
I
so cool.
can't tell you how grateful I am actually to because I also think it helps you to stay young to a certain extent. You know, and sometimes my kids are surprised that, you know, they tell me about things that they discuss in school, or, you know, the latest artist or the latest, you know, hip hop video, TikTok video, sorry, that has gone viral, you know, and I'm saying, yeah, I know. And then they look at me, go, what do you mean, you know? I go, because I know. That's my job. It's my job to know.
Right? That's fantastic. That's fantastic. You mentioned the trend editions from the
Yes.
brand. You know, I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of mimicry in the trend space. Are you at times essentially imitating maybe what higher price point brands are doing? Or if not, how does your term manage to interpret trends for your particular customer?
I mean, if you're talking about trends, trends is something that, let's say, the cultural movement, the social media, and the music and everything is sort of moving forward. I don't think we're imitating trends with our trend editions. The trend editions are really an interpretation of a specific theme. I think what you are referring to is maybe, let's say prestige inspired products that, the lower price brands are launching in the market, which is something that of course has grown, I think, in general across the industry in the
Yeah.
last couple of years, because the consumers are really looking for, let's say, affordable alternatives. And I think they've all understood, if you want to spend a lot of money on a lipstick from a prestige brand, that's totally fine, and it works. But a lot of the price you pay is, of course, for the branding and for the, luxurious feeling. If you're just looking for, let's say, a similar effect or a similar product result, I believe that the younger generation now has understood that you don't have to pay so much money. And this idea of democratization of beauty, that is also very on vogue right now. And I think a lot of brands have claimed that now for themselves. It's just something that has become very acceptable. So I think the consumer is very educated, and the consumer is comparing performances and products. So yeah, of course we are, let's say, offer the assortment that our consumers are asking us to do. And
Yeah.
some of those also might be prestige inspired, because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. That makes very good sense. I, I'm looking at my questions, my notes that I've prepared for our interview, and I guess I'm very fascinated by this idea of continual newness. So forgive me as I keep asking around this topic, but I'm wondering if there are particular risks to being a brand that relies very intensely, if you will, on newness.
Yeah. I see what you mean. I think the secret is, and maybe also why we've been so successful over the past 20 years, we've actually turned 20 years last year, is because we are relying on newness, but it's not 100% of our assortment. We do have really very well established and long-term bestsellers in our assortment that have been around for many, many years. We have many mascara ranges, foundations, concealers. Our nail polish has been around for, a long time. Of course, we make sure the textures are updated and always, very modern and, are performing state of the art. But a big chunk of our business, and I think also that's why our consumers, I believe, are also staying with us, even if they, let's say, grow older. Once they found their favorite product and is one of our bestsellers, then they can continue using that. And if you, let's say, spice it up continuously with newness, and if you can set the impulses and bring also newness and excitement and surprises, then that's, I believe,
Yeah.
what makes a brand
No,
interesting.
no, yeah, I completely understand. Even as you were talking, I was thinking about consumer trust,
Totally.
finding something that they know is reliable. And I would
Yeah.
imagine that consumer, like you said, once they find it, they stick with a particular product. But I would imagine that also makes them more inclined to feel comfortable discovering the newness that does come from the brand, or try something that is, maybe not something that they've ever used before, that your brand is one they might go to. That's such an interesting way to think about it. Now, another topic here that we've covered previously on CosmoFactory is this idea of the slow beauty movement. We've also heard about something called underconsumption, where consumers are intentionally buying less. I think I would be remiss if we didn't get into this a bit. Can you share your perspective on ideas like consumer buying fatigue, or what
Yeah.
people might even describe as overproduction in our industry?
I think it's that, there's no secret that there has been a huge beauty party over the last couple of years. I think the growth in the beauty segment, specifically also in color, was very impressive, not just for us, but I believe for many of, also our competitors.
Yeah.
And the fact that this sort of, let's say, beauty party is coming to an end eventually is not a surprise, at least to me. I think we all expected this. Let's say the music is not turned down totally, but it's it's becoming a little bit more softer, which is totally understandable and also fine. I don't believe the consumer is going to stop looking for newness and stop looking for innovation and for new impulses, especially in beauty. I just think he or she filters more. I really believe that we will probably have a cleanup of the brands in the next couple of years, because there was a time when you almost had a new brand launching every week. And they were like popping out, especially when brick and mortar is not the condition to launch a brand anymore. And all you basically need is, let's say, a website and an online shop to be able to launch your brand. And, combined with social media, everyone technically can do that. And I think a lot of brands came out in the last couple of years. And of course, that sort of overwhelms the consumer. I mean, I'm overwhelmed myself, to be honest. It's so hard to keep track on what's going on. So I do believe there will be a natural cleanup and the consumer will be able to, filter more. And if we are in a position and if we get it right and we offer exciting, cool concepts that our consumers and the girls are looking for, I'm not worried.
Yeah, no, that's a nice nuance. Absolutely. And it's interesting, you talk about being sort of overwhelmed with all the launches in recent years. The episode we had on Slow Beauty with Katie Becker, she stepped away from her work in a formal editorial role, partly because of that sense of overwhelm. There was so much to cover. And I have to say, I personally sort of find it validating to hear both of you speak to that, because there had been just such a flood of stuff, if you will, to pay attention to in our industry. Yeah.
You can't keep up. And I think even now with everything that's going on in the world and the fact that every industry is becoming more and more global, it's not anymore just to be able to understand, what's going on in the German market, what's going on in the European market. Then of course, for many, many, many years, it has been the US. Okay, so what's going on in the US market? Which brands are coming? If you ask me now, but that's not nearly enough. You also have to understand what's going on in Asia. You have to understand which Korean brands are popping up because they are now taking over. So it's impossible to keep up. And I think that's one of the reasons why you can understand the launches and the trends coming from everywhere in the world. And you have to, of course, have an understanding of the new technologies and the sort of product launches. But in the end of the day, you have to find your own way and you have to come up with your own innovation. Because if you always just rely on what other people are doing, then you have a lot to rely on.
Right.
Which you have to understand first.
Yeah, you lose your decision-making process.
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared this idea of watching trends, though. I think there is something to the idea of finding inspiration, and certainly, suppliers as well as brands look outward and track what's happening in beauty worldwide. I guess, can you say more about when it's appropriate to watch another market for inspiration, or, sort of, are there particular markets you pay attention to, and how much has that changed over the course of your career now that we are so global? Are you sort of refocusing on the German market in particular, or where are you looking?
Yeah, interesting question. It's actually quite the opposite. We are not focusing on Germany. We are actually expanding very largely and moving more and more into more countries in the world. So for us, also here, let's say at the headquarters, it's very important to understand globally what the trends are and to try to identify the global trends that hopefully land in as many countries as possible. And then, of course, we have the, let's say, local needs from our markets and our regions that we are very closely in touch with. And they also let us know what's going on in the market and what they need. So to be honest, we have to sort of, we have to have a global understanding on the product trends that we see, especially in beauty, which for the past years, the US has always been the center of that, has always been the epicenter and driving the trends. the new brands that have launched over the last couple of years, especially celebrity driven, were the ones, I think, as we all know, who have sort of been the boss of the playground, I like to say.
Yeah.
And what we see right now is a shift from the influence. So I think the US will continue to play a role, definitely, especially when it comes to looks and, the celebrities and the individuals that the consumers aspire to. But if you look from a technical perspective or a texture perspective, it's actually more the other side of the world. So the influence from Asia, specifically from Korea, at least from my perspective, has gained and accelerated in speed dramatically. It's not a totally new development, but I believe if you look at the last even 1.5 years, I see the speed has accelerated really, really, really strongly. And my assumption would be that, the brands that are able to bring those two together will probably win the consumer's heart. I mean, everyone knows everything, so to say, yeah. So I mean, with TikTok and Insta and everything that we have at our finger points, the girls also have that at their finger points. So if there's a hot Korean brand, they know, of course they do, and then that's what they want to have, And so we have to be aware a little bit of everything. As I said, we try our best to keep up, but we also have to come up with our own, as I said, what is it that the consumers want in the markets? What are the looks that the girls are trying to achieve? How can we support them? What are they wishing for? And if you combine all these things, you hopefully have a nice flower bouquet that everyone can find something nice.
Yes, yes. Well, that's very interesting. We have to leave it there. Isabelle, you have a wonderful energy for your work. This was a good conversation. I thank you for being a guest today on the CosmoFactory podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the CosmoFactory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the CosmoFactory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the CosmoFactory podcast.